just got dealt a hand. What do you do now? Well, obviously, as with all things in poker, it depends. But on what? We caught up with Timex McDonald to discuss the checklist of things you should be considering before acting on your hand.
Before you make a decision in a hand, you've got to pay attention to all the variables that are at play. The first thing you should do is, before you look at your cards, you should know what positioning you're in. A lot of times you'll see someone look at their hand and then they'll try to figure out, they'll play it in mid position but not in early position. And then if they're looking to see where they are at the table, that kind of is, kind of transparent that they have something speculative. And then additionally, you should, keep track of, if there's any players away from the table, because that affects your relative position. On top of that, you should try to know everyone's stack size, or at least a good approximate of how many chips they have, and then have a rough idea in your head of what hands you'd be willing to play from that position. Like, before you look at your cards, you should have a rough idea of exactly what you're going to do with each hand. A lot of times when someone has something right on that borderline, they'll look down at their hand and then they'll think a little bit longer than normal, and then again you can kind of tell that person has something speculative. So if you just say no in your head, you're going to play ace-8 or better, king-10 or better, or any pair or something like that. If you just look down at your cards and see that, you play ace-8, you don't play ace-7, and that way when you get like ace-7 or ace-8, you're not just kind of like hemming and hawing, you just have it figured out beforehand. Then additionally, you should try to think about what's previously happened at the table. Like, if one guy's on tilt, or if one guy's drunk, or if a big pot just happened, try to think about how that's going to alter future play, and then kind of affect your hand ranges based on that.
While McDonald recommends that players gather all of the relevant data before acting on their hand, he also cautions against trying to plan too far ahead pre-flop.
Yeah, I'd say there are some players who think that they should know exactly what to do against any series of actions, but I think I'm the type of person, I try to figure out what's the right action, and then kind of react to what happens, I suppose. I'm not trying to think of, all right, if this guy 3-bets to under 27k, I'm going to be 4-betting. If he 3-bets to this range, I'll be calling. I'm not thinking about every single thing that happens. And sometimes there are a lot of live elements that go into play as well. Like, sometimes I'll have something near the bottom of my range that I'll be 4-betting over a 3-bet, or something near the top of my range I'll be folding to a 3-bet, depending on the person's timing, their sizing, whether they seem comfortable or not. So I think some people get too carried away with planning too far ahead, because there often just be so much more information at hand. So I tend to plan maybe a street ahead, or a half street ahead, I suppose. But I don't have everything figured out for every combination of sizing and action and turn and river card combination. It's not as if I've thought that far forward when I'm playing hands.
Thanks again to Mike McDonald for his insight, and thank you for tuning in to this edition of Poker Strategy right here on Card Player TV.